Okay, now we're
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Amherst Women's Club meeting. As you know, the past 4 presidents of the club are taking turns as president during this unusual year, and now it's my turn. I'm happy to welcome this afternoon's guests, Mary Beth Ogolevitz and Patricia Rector, who will be speaking to us about women's elderhood. Mary Beth is the Director of Senior Services for the town of Amherst. With a background in law, social work, and mindfulness, she empowers older adults to thrive from a strengths-based perspective. She is inspired by the courage, hope, and beauty of aging and hopes others train their attention to notice the same. She lives in Western Massachusetts, where she was raised, and has enjoyed challenging outdated beliefs. Patricia Rector serves as chair of the Amherst Council on Aging, which advocates for the needs of seniors. Pat brings a lifetime of grassroots social and political advocacy to this volunteer position. She has listened and learned, mobilized and marched, debated and demanded, wailed and witnessed with those who have been marginalized. Her feminism has roots in Western Massachusetts, where she studied political science many years ago. She embraces her own elderhood with all its unfolding discoveries. So welcome to Pat and to Mary Beth.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Mary Beth, and I'm just going to shift to this just for one moment so you can see there's Pat. So we are here live together, and because we're together, we are modeling, wearing our masks, and also socially distancing ourselves. So for the first few minutes, I'll speak with you, and then I'm going to actually shift the screen to Pat, who will do a lot more of the speaking, but you'll be able to hear my voice as I engage in inquiry with her. Pat said today that we're going to be Savannah and Hoda. So I hope you enjoy this, and we're looking forward. So we'll speak probably for about 30 minutes or so, and then we're really happy to entertain questions or lively debate or any kind of discussion that really fills your cup of tea today. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting us. I do feel a bit sad that you're not with us here, because this is really the highlight of my week, I can assure you, and probably my highlight for several months. Coming here today, the enduring quality of the Amherst Women's Club, and also the setting and the sort of grounding and centeredness that it represents, and connecting us to history and the long history of Amherst. I have to tell you, it feels like a warm embrace to be in this space, and I'm trying to channel all of you here with me. So thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. And then just by way of introduction, and why Pat and I leaped at the opportunity to speak when we were approached, is that people often wonder, why are you here in Amherst? Why are you in this position as Director of Senior Services? Why would you be interested? And I think it is, for me, the juxtaposition of what we think typically about being an older person and what I know to be true, especially having landed here. So when we say that word old, I think the typical associations are perhaps frail, ill, or maybe vulnerable. They're largely negative associations. And in my legal work, I represented a great deal of older adults, and didn't find that to be true at all. In fact, it was the opposite. And then when we look at cultural references to aging, I think that what we all see, or at least certainly where I'm at in my stage, is everything is anti-aging. So everybody wants me to prevent getting older. So, you know, the creams, the lotions, the various Spanx products designed to try to retain some kind of youthful figure. It's really bombarding with ways to prevent, which is a natural, beautiful process to unfold. And so what I know to be true through all of my life's work, and Pat, I think that this is why I love being with her so much, is that we can shift narratives. And that really is part of my engagement around this position and in the community, is re-engaging people around what is the narrative of growing older, because aging is also living. And I think that there's somehow a way in which we have disrupted that concept. And so I think of aging as a period of curiosity, a period of pleasure, of wisdom, of enlightenment, and freedom. And I say that because I'm a keen observer and I watch the people who come to the senior center, and I don't think of them necessarily as frail, vulnerable, and ill. And yes, there are times that people might be more incapacitated physically, but I think that we all have a self-identity that defies that biological age. And I think that that's really what enhances us and lights us up. So with that said, I would love to introduce my dear friend and partner in crime here in the town of Amherst. Pat Rector is our new chair of the Council on Aging. And I'm going to now shift the screen to Pat. So hopefully you're going to still hear my voice as I go through sort of we're going to do a question and answer today, so that you can get a better sense of who she is and what the work is ahead that they are grafting together as the Council on Aging. And I hope you find it as exciting and thrilling as I do. So here you go, Pat, and then you can arrange it in whatever way.
Yes. Hello. I want to echo the gratitude, the statement of gratitude that I have for the invitation to be here and to and say thank you as well to Beverly Atkinson, who greeted us so warmly. And it's great to be back to this site. This is my second visit at the Amherst Women's Club. I wanted to say a few words about, by way of prelude, because what I want to share with you is not a formal speech, but really, hopefully, a deep conversation, a deep reflection about where we are now, and informal comments that are messy and maybe inconclusive. Very much a work in progress. So if you're looking for a formal speech, that's not what we're likely to do. But if you can tolerate our informality and our messiness and questions and concerns that are still in works in progress, then you've come to the right place. A word about my own roots in the Pioneer Valley. This place, this region was formative for me when I came here as a young woman. I had my own roots in the late 60s and early 70s in the civil rights movement, and was informed by the notion that lifted my young 20-year-old spirit about beloved community, which at its core is love and a belief, an almost childlike belief, that a better world is possible. Here in the Pioneer Valley, I was a student in political science with in a doctoral program in political science, and with a dissertation topic that was way too broad, women, morality, and power. And that represented really some of the things that most interested me. So I was a young feminist, an evolving feminist. And at the time I was living, I lived for about 6 years in Northampton, and was taking the 5 college bus into virtually every day into Amherst. And there was a women's center at UMass that was really vibrant and active. And there was a women's center as well on the 2nd floor of a downtown building in Northampton. And I was present in both places. And so it was a crucible of my own development, and it still informs my my life and my passions today. So after 50 years of activism in my in Syracuse, New York, where I spent most of my professional career, I ended up here because I loved this place so much, this town, this region, and its history. About 3 years ago, I was very restless, and I decided I wanted to volunteer at the Amherst Senior Center. And honestly, I'm not sure why I selected that, except I guess I felt that I was newly retired and I was still exploring my own identity as an older person. And I think that when I first started, I also, thought of myself as like doing social service or volunteer work kind of with those old people, that kind of thing, that we sometimes apply. That really changed radically. In the 3 years that I worked on the desk every Friday, the reception desk, I loved it. I signed up for a double shift. I met so many people, and I began to discover what a foundation of strength and vitality existed at the senior center. So,
Can you explain can I just pause for a second there, Pat, and just say, you said that you loved it. And can you just share what it is? What was the quality that drew you there, or the value, or what were you drawing from that experience?
well, I am one of those, when I enter a new social situation or a community or a town, I look around with hopefully fresh eyes to see what's going on, who are the players, what are the issues, what do people care about, what are the values that drive the place. And I think with the senior center, it was one of the, after, literally a few years of exploration, what I discovered was that the senior center was a place where I could encounter people of different social classes, people of different educational and ethnic backgrounds. There was a vibrance to the place and a kindness to the place, that kindness to each other. What I discovered was this as a real strength out of that kindness was that this was a laboratory where people could build bridges with each other, whether we were sweating together in an exercise class, whether we were listening to learning about a Shakespeare play, whether we were hooting and hollering over the cribbage game. And I saw that happening every day. I also saw the struggles of seniors as well in the larger community, the struggles and the achievements, certainly. And there were real conversations there. People talked openly with each other. And I thought, wow, this is an extraordinary place. There's so much possibility here. And I knew that that was a place that I needed to be. So it held me there. It still holds me there.
And that's why you're probably now on the Council on Aging.
Yes.
I always think it's interesting when I'm trying to learn something, I often put myself where there are others just a little bit further down the line so I can learn from them. And I'm wondering if that might have held some truth for you as well, as someone who might have been newly retired and on the sort of, we've been playing with different terms, that there's young elderhood, or there's people have also talked about soft seniors, so people entering post-retirement, and whether there was any sort of mentoring, I guess, that was happening, or like a peek ahead of what life would be like or could be like or potential. Yeah.
Yes, I certainly sensed that, because I could not help but realize that, let's just say, around the many classes that support physical movement and the movement of the body, that the range was set up, the program offerings were so expansive. And so that a person who either lives with either a temporary or permanent disability could feel included and affirmed, and experience the joy of uh, of participation and community, which is essential to all human beings. And I also saw cultivated a sense of a sensitivity and a tenderness. People are both can respect our strength, but also a sort of a tender discernment about where we each are on our paths. And I felt that I could both be and invite people to talk honestly about what their struggles were, what was going well in their lives, and share their experience of their lives. And so that is, it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you suddenly found yourself, or I shouldn't say suddenly, but eventually you found yourself in a position where you agreed to take on, I guess, more leadership, certainly, and advocacy. And I'm just wondering what caused you to make that shift from being a participant to being someone who says, I'm willing to step into that next level of engagement.
Well, I would say a great big whopping thank you to you, Mary Beth, for your asking again and again, asking us, challenging us to say to inquire who's at the table and who's missing. And that, first of all, I think is just always such a powerful question, and a very you pose that question in a way that is open to a variety of possibilities. And I have learned from being immersed in the activities at the senior center, and among activities and elders throughout my living space, at Greenleaves, people in the community that in my house of faith, my house of worship, and just moving about in town, I've noticed that it's opportunities to creating opportunities for people to have genuine conversations and real conversations has been something that supported me. I guess secondly, I want to say that that the question sort of dealing with who's at the table and who isn't is one I've been asking sort of all my life, and wanting to look at how is it possible to remove, not only to remove barriers, which I think is certainly essential work of advocacy, of vibrant advocacy, but also what are we missing? What are we missing morally and spiritually and culturally from communities, warm and often, shall I dare say, too comfortable communities that need, I guess I think that for growth and learning to take place, being open to building bridges to people with different perspectives and inviting that, and even to learn how to manage conflict in a way. Women in particular, I think I've learned over my life, maybe as my life as a rebel girl, is that sometimes we are burdened by our own niceness. I know that's how I was acculturated, to be nice, not to make waves, to take care of other people's feelings. And that can be actually quite oppressive. And it certainly does not equip us very well to scrutinize inequities and injustice. And so I guess that's another reason why I thought that the laboratory of learning and bridge building that I experienced at the senior center and among seniors in town is something that could also be improved.
Mhm.
That we could take steps together to see each other more clearly and to experience each other and deepen our connections and our relationship with each other. And I think that's in part, one part of the challenge of beloved community.
And I also, as I listen to you, I love the title of this conversation and the reference particularly to the spiral and the spiraling, because I think that what I hear reflected in your words, and certainly my own experience, is how we are in experiences over and over and over, and dipping down into that spiral, into wisdom, into prior experiences we've had, whether it's, being part of the feminist revolution, whether it's part of prior work, doing public health work, how that nurtures us. And even as we continue to spiral and grow upward, we can dip down into those same, characteristics and attributes and knowledge and wisdom. And I think that to me is the real benefit of aging, is that it's a deep spiral that we can dip into and then constantly move forward. So I would love to know a little bit more in terms of when you're thinking about this talk, and also women and aging in particular, what would be the message that you hope to either bring to or to foster with other women in the community about aging?
Well, I guess one core concept and one motivator for me is that the great and historic movements, social movements, political movements of our time do not exempt elders from participating. That is, and not only is it vital that our voices be heard and our experiences be built upon, but it's also because any specific segment of society, however you slice the various multiple identities that we have, as either white women or women of a certain class, or women with a disability, or women of a specific ethnicity. However I slice our multiple identities, that those experiences enrich the larger community if there are occasions and opportunities to share that with others in some way, in a meaningful way. We are at a time, because of the pandemic, at a time that if there's any redemptive outcome or possibility because of the pandemic, it is that it can be a time of reflection for all of us. And I found that. And I decided I need to do me some homework I need to do some deep thinking and encounter and be challenged to look at my life, its history, what it adds up to, its meaning, and what am I preparing for? I do feel that the pandemic is an opportunity to make use of that time, and I think and elders. I guess the other thing I would think about elders is that I think of Greta Thunberg, the activist who has felt so betrayed by the political forces, global political forces that have ignored the rising generations. And I think that younger people, our children and our grandchildren need our stories, need our insights, need to see us do what we can to shape the future, and to engage in the national reckoning that is going on about racism and the deep divisions that exist and persist in our society, that go deeper than political party, that go much deeper than Republicans or Democrats, or but that will continue to challenge us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's
Yeah.
one
So,
thread.
I guess it is, so, looking at our time, drilling down into sort of practical tasks or practical things that if someone feels inspired or someone feels like I would like to embody that in a concrete way,
Yes.
do you have things that you could suggest?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to say some of the work that we intend to do in the council and that we are looking to do as we reflect on how the council can better serve elders, not just in the Bang Center, but elders throughout the entire community. We are a community of communities. Not everything, I think I can't help but notice that our town is very white, that the population at the senior center, at the Bank Center is very white, and that and there are other meaningful communities of elders in other locations in our town. So we need to meet each other where we are. And so thinking about programming and bridge building is certainly something that is possible. I want to even say it more specifically that we're looking at how we can support that effort by creating occasions for first of all, for white people, to discuss their own history of and encounters with racism and how that's impacted their lives and those stories, because those stories and the truths of those stories will help us prepare us to stop doing harm to communities of color or different ethnicities or different classes. So when we do return to be in community with each other in the senior center, that we will be prepared. So I think that that white folks have a challenge to that. We can learn to be better witnesses to each other when there are instances of casual microaggressions or other forms, more overt forms of racism, so that we can speak up, because most white people have experiences when we have been silent. And we need to develop muscles in that way. I want to say more specifically also that we're going to, my hope is that there's real diversity on the council itself. We're headed in the direction of creating a council of 9 members, which will be 37% possibly either people of color or of a different ethnic identity than is that is non-white ethnic identity, and so that itself by itself is not enough, but it's a huge step forward in having these conversations. We're also looking to figure out, develop some committees and projects to look at how to remove barriers, institutional barriers for full participation of elders, because the experience of being an elder person as a person of color has some very different qualities than it does for white folks. So we want to do that. And what skills do we have to bring to that? We have educational skills. We have our own stories that help us understand what the sting of exclusion feels like to ourselves, so that we can imagine better what exclusion feels like for those whose lives are profoundly erected with barriers and exclusions and inequities. So specifically, we're setting up associate memberships of very practical task groups to look at some of these problems. And we're hoping that people will bring their intellect and their heart and their soul and their skills into helping us assess our programming, what's missing, our outreach, and develop strategies around that, around policy areas that affect elders. Secondly, nothing happens, or rarely happens without around advocacy issues if seniors themselves don't develop political power as seniors, as all seniors. We may have different experiences, life experiences, but if we don't build political power around issues of importance to us, let's say like age-friendly transportation, respectful delivery of healthcare, and other issues regarding access, then without that political power, not much changes. So that's part of what we are doing. And I invite people, I want to share, as we develop these committees, I want to share my own contact information, pat.rector, RECTOR @gmail.com, so that we can figure, we're doing some talent scouting, frankly, for people who have some thoughts about these issues, who've been in town much longer than I have, but also are open to the possibility of looking at these issues critically, and going beyond are willing to sort of rethink how we are embodying our own values.
Nice. Great. And do you have any other, because I'm looking at the time, do you have any other final thoughts that you would like to share about women, aging, leadership, power, and the spiral of life?
Yes, I do. I think that in the past, we've had our whole social system, our nation, we live and occupy and have lived our lives in very hierarchical systems. And I think part of the challenge, as I reflect on the kind of work I would like to do with others, is one that welcomes more active engagement, more small d democratic engagement, and collective problem solving, so that as we move together, we are creating a space for people to bring their specific talent and skills, and liberating that in a way that helps us advance. And I guess I would, and the second part of that really is that beloved community will always be a work in progress. It really does. It's not the warm, gooey feeling of, but something that needs to be like love itself. That it has to be engage the intellect, the heart, and the energy of people in a fierce and committed way, and in practical ways. So that requires organizing and thought and metrics and timetables, those serious elements that move organizations and people together. My friend, Native American Audrey Shenandoah, shared with me one sentence that has been a guide for me, which is for years, and that is that if you are on the right path, you don't need to hurry. And what that has meant to me is that this is a time when I think of the senior center or work together with elders, is I'm done with those with rushing through checklists and task lists and so forth in a way that that excludes others. I'm looking for us to be able to, the part of the gift of aging is to have the time to reflect and dig deep. And really, as Audrey would say, from her wisdom as a clan mother of the Onondaga Nation, a Native American woman, if you're on the right path, you don't need to hurry. And I think what we can do is work to build for the long haul and for the far future.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Beautiful. And I just want to finish with, so speaking as to Pat's reference to time, is the thing that really strikes me about the work that I do with senior services is that the period of elderhood is approximately 40 years. So if we consider it beginning at age 60, and then it could go potentially to 100 years old, that's 40 years as a developmental stage. There is no other developmental stage of a human being that is as long as elderhood. And yet it receives the least amount of attention, curiosity, research, and sort of enforcement as an important stage. Not as a stage that just closes a chapter, but that also opens the book. And I think of it often that if you go to a good movie, if you read a good book, the last chapters are the best, right? So how many times have you, or you finished a book and the last chapter is really unsatisfying, or a character didn't develop all the way, or the story just kind of like went off hook, right? So I think of our lives as just that those final chapters are the most important. It is the juiciest work. It is the most interesting, where resolution can happen, Pyrrhic victories, huge victories, whatever it is, right? So investing in this time as a community and in a conversation really, I think, matters, because it says this is the value of the entirety of my life. and that endings and aging is in fact living. So I know that the cultural reference is to the opposite, but I would suggest that we have the possibility to change that narrative, and that's certainly part of the work ahead of us, and that we can. And I think that that's what gives me hope when I look at the long history of the Amherst Senior Center. And the wonderful thing about the pandemic is I've been able to read so many historical documents, and Nancy Pagano was a fabulous historian. And what I know to be true is that at every juncture where there was a crisis or there was some huge challenge, the community always met it, always. And I think that this is just another one of those opportunities in helping people rise. So we might be separated, but we are still, the containers of who we are still as vibrant as ever and alive. So we invite you to join us, hold our hands, even if it's virtually for a little while, and participate in the conversation of what does it mean to age well in Amherst. So thank you. And we're going to ask Hank to help us to do questions because we're not entirely sure how to do this. And I'm going to just kind of swing it back so that the screen is a little bit more centered. Thank you.
Okay, folks, just go ahead and raise your hand when you have a question and I will unmute you. I see Charlene. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Charlene.
Okay. Hi, Pat and Mary Beth. Are you there? No?
Yeah, we can hear you, Charlene. Try again.
Oops. Now I can't hear her.
Charlene, try and unmute yourself again.
Can you
Good.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you there, Pat? No. Pat and Mary Beth are not getting through to them?
No.
Okay, good. We can hear you. Charlene, you're there?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You can hear me now?
Yes.
I wanted to know, I know Mary Beth, you've been here for a couple of years, but a lot of that time in the last almost year, you've been, things have been so different. And you and I talked at one point when you first came here, and I wanted to know what your vision is in terms of new directions for the senior center.
Yeah. I think that, you've got to just echo, hold on a second. Yeah. So I think that what I would have responded to you probably 6 months ago is very different from what my response would be at this point in time.
Mhm.
I think the pandemic has really challenged us to think about a senior center versus senior services that are widely distributed throughout the community in multiple touch points. So I think that depending on what happens with the course of this pandemic, what we've been doing is investing more in social work services in a mobile manner and making ourselves accessible and going to locations where seniors are located. So that's one thing I can suggest to you. So that the center as a location has proven not to be accessible. And so we have to be able to be responsive. And I think that it's also an outgrowth of really the need in the town to be more present in places or spaces where there are groups of seniors, but they might have perhaps not felt invited or welcomed or just have the political agency to access us. And we used to see that with our bread and produce program. So for instance, folks would come to participate in a program where they would receive groceries, but they would never come upstairs. And it would astound me that there were about 8 stairs between the first floor and the second floor, but it could have seemed like 8 floors of stairs. And trying to make it a people's center as opposed to a center that's identified with a group of people. Right before, right after we closed for the pandemic, we talk about the vision of what our goals are in the immediate. We have some big goals. As one, we were very, very fortunate that we were supported by the town to refurbish the senior center. So right now we have new furniture, we have a new layout. It will be fantastic and amenable to having gatherings post-pandemic and also provide for additional space. And then when we look at what our sort of goals are with programming, we're always looking at a way to make it more inclusive and perhaps more reflective of the community. So the council has been asking me, we've been talking about an audit of the programming and how it meets the various populations and those who have been marginalized. We will also, starting in January, begin a program to apply as the community to become an age-friendly and a dementia-friendly community. And that's a rather large and inclusive and expansive undertaking, where we'll be looking at a variety of domains that are established by those organizations in order to attain that status to become an age-friendly or dementia-friendly community. And it's everything from the hardscape of the downtown to a walkable community, looking at sidewalks, looking at transportation, looking at social services. So it's looking at various domains of healthy living through the lens of someone who is either older and also someone who has dementia. And an example of that would be, it doesn't require an outlay of capital. What it suggests is that the capital that you're providing as you are doing any changes, that you also scrutinize it through the lens of age-friendly and dementia-friendly. So if you had a grant that allowed you to add additional seating in downtown, so some benches. What we would do is through the age-friendly lens, you would make sure, for instance, that they had elbow rests, right? And that they were a sufficient height that it would be comfortable for an older person to be able to get up from those heights of that bench. A dementia-friendly lens would also suggest that some of those benches should be placed in quieter spaces. So not just on Main Street, but perhaps in an area that's more covered, maybe down in like by Sweetser Park, something that's quieter so that it would be accessible for somebody who has dementia. And then we are always looking at the issue primarily of transportation. So if you were to ask me, what's the number one thing that we don't do that we must do? It is transportation for seniors. So in fact, from here, I'll be going, we are applying for a grant. We've applied for several. We haven't yet received one, but we have to be able to transport our seniors because we can put on all the programs. We can connect them with doctors, but if we don't have a way for them to get from point A to point B, none of that matters. So transportation is really a key to helping individuals who are aging. So I hope that gives you some idea of
Terrific.
where we're at. And it is an iterative and also I would suggest an evolving process because there's been a lot of conversation that senior centers are changing as a result of the pandemic. And conceiving of themselves in different ways because the concept of just a center where people got all of their services has not been able to hold the center.
Thank you.
Okay, Dorothy, Pam, you're next. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, so I just want to congratulate you on the flexibility, creativity that you have shown in meeting the needs in this really. So we got, is there still a big echo right now? Okay, so I think you solved that. I just wanted to bring up a point that the senior centers, as we know them, is a really new and radical concept that started in the 1970s, and it was done by political people. There have always been groups that have had programs for seniors connected to organizations or paid for by private money or by philanthropists. But the senior center that, as we know it today, says public money should be spent on nutrition for seniors for them to eat in a social setting. And the social setting really was because they said it was better for them nutritionally to eat with people, not alone. And of course, you've seen how senior centers have grown since then. And it's a really radical idea. And to me, the next frontier, I mean, she has outlined a lot of the new developments in decentralization of senior services. But to me, the new frontier in senior services is connectivity, which is making sure that every senior has a working iPad or laptop, has internet, and has somebody to teach her or him how to use it. And it has ongoing support, because I tell you, for all the stuff I have to do on the internet, I need ongoing support. And so does everybody. So that's a big, expensive program that I see as being absolutely essential. And we have seen in this time how here we are, this is just a small group. This is not our whole membership. We have a lot of people who maybe they're busy doing kayaking today, but maybe they're not here because they don't have a computer, don't have internet, or have no idea how to use it. And I have a couple of friends who are totally cut off, who just nobody seems to be able to get them hooked up yet. So we have to work on this as the Amherst Women's Club. And I have every confidence that our Amherst Senior Center, under the really, really exciting leadership that both of you have presented, will be trying to meet these new needs.
Yeah, and Dorothy, in case, I don't know if everybody is aware, so we have applied and successfully received 2 grants to purchase iPads. So we have started a technology loan library already. And then I had a fundraiser. I ran 200 miles from Amherst to Provincetown, and I raised another $2,000 through that to purchase additional iPads. And we've also received some donations from community members to support that effort. So we've started it, but I would echo and emphasize and underline and put exclamation marks around your comments, because what I've suggested is that the technological digital divide for seniors is as important as it is for our students here in Amherst. And it has been a lifeblood, and that internet ought not to be a commodity, it ought to be a utility, and everybody should have access to it. So yeah, that is an audacious statement that you've made, and I absolutely agree with, but I think that it is absolutely the direction that we need to go. And we're making small gains, but there's a lot more work to be done around that, as this whole event reflects, right?
I would like to also just add to that, which is that through the Massachusetts Council on Aging, we're connecting with examples of other communities that, of course, in the Commonwealth, who are struggling with this problem and are succeeding in bridging the digital divide. And Dorothy, you're exactly right that ongoing support is needed, and that that they're at multiple levels, so that people who are at a certain level, let's say they Zoom, but they want to build their skills, that's one kind of level. But there are people who don't know how to just turn the computer on, or to create an email list, or they're just or how to dispose of keep their email lists low, so that, to empty the trash from time to time, the electronic trash. So it is really vital to learning, and there are some great success models of people of seniors who are connecting together as near as a few towns away. So that's part of, I think, why we're doing talent scouting for those who have an interest in bridging the digital divide, to help us figure out how we can make progress in our community in that regard as well.
Okay, other questions? Oh yeah, Donna, go ahead.
As you mentioned, well, as you mentioned other communities, I was just wondering and this is more perhaps information than anything, is there any networking between the senior centers in the valley? And if you're looking at for diversity, can the networking between different senior centers be perhaps a direction to make that happen, or to bridge connections?
Yeah. Thanks. Donna, is it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Hi, Donna. Yes, so I will tell you, since I arrived in my professional career, I've always had colleagues in which to draw upon, and that was not true when I arrived in Amherst. So I actually began a Western Mass monthly meeting, actually twice monthly since the pandemic, of all Western Mass directors. So we meet Friday mornings every other week. We do a lot of sharing. What I would suggest around sort of the concept of diversity and or social justice, I would suggest that Amherst is probably the only senior center to take that on as a mandate and a topic. I think that many of the other communities are just differently poised politically, culturally, and are just not able to engage in that sort of meta level of conversation. That hasn't been a source. I will say it is a tremendous resource for all of us around all of the practical things of how are you running your grab and go lunch? How long do you think that this is going to go on for? Right now, before this conversation, I was in text with 7 other directors about the AARP tax program, which is extremely beneficial to over 400 seniors at the Amherst Senior Center. And we're all strategizing about how are you going to run it? How can we make this operate? So we do draw upon each other extensively. And then we have a monthly meeting of all senior centers that is sponsored by MCOA. So there have been some really wonderful outgrowths of this time. And you know, we do lean on each other. I will tell you one of the interesting and fun things. So for the holiday, we were saying, you know, so many of us were out of ideas of how do we do some kind of a holiday celebration. And so my neighbor's Rich Tedimer, and so I called him and I said, Rich, can we have all of Western Mass put together a show for our senior communities on, they have a show at like 11 o'clock in the morning. I can't think of what it's called. So anyways, that's what we're doing. So we are all pulling together our resources to get together a few entertainers and to also have some information built into that program. And it will be for everybody in the community rather than there sort of being a lot of small efforts and sort of redundancy. So we're looking at different ways to cooperate, but that's a new relationship, but exciting. Oh,
Norma?
Norma.
Norma, go ahead. Unmute yourself, Norma. Norma, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Sorry. I got it, Hank. Hank knows because he helped me for years when we went to electronic medical records. So. But I think that, you know, I wondered about when the pandemic is over. I mean, the schools have enough issues now, you know, with trying to deal with COVID, and are they going to be in, you know, virtual or hybrid or what? But to do like a big sister, big brother program, you know, and have a mentor and maybe a student that they have some class that's in order to graduate, they must do so many community. And I know some of the colleges have that, but working with seniors with the technology, even just with, you know, being available to them, or that it might work if the schools could get involved, but I don't think the time is right now. But.
Well, hello, Norma, and that you're so right about that. I think with some of the surveys that have been done across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have said that seniors welcome and look for opportunities for intergenerational programming and support, and so integrating that into overcoming the digital divide is something I think that has great possibility. And so the council's challenge will be and Mary Beth's challenge will be to figure out how we can make that work. The student population is the transient population, but yeah, I can tell you that in the Merrimack Valley, it's working and working extremely well, and that the learning that's going on makes it possible for many encounters. Playful, it's not all serious, and it supports this emotional and social connection that many folks feel. I will also say that part of another component of connectivity is also support for those often seniors themselves who are caregivers. And again, to be able to connect with and listen to the issues of caregivers and to offer support is another thing that we can probably enrich our activity around. I have certainly strong interest in public health as well, around issues that regarding access, so that and health disparities, and overcoming those health disparities in our community based on various barriers, including institutional racism and attitudes and cultural habits that have hurt many people and have reduced and have shortened their lives because of it. So anyway, those are other communities of people involved in these topics who need to be included in the conversation and problem solving. I hope that we can, one hope I have in the long run is to be able to more actively engage the university community, the academic community in some of this, in joining us as a senior center and in senior services in problem solving and innovation and documenting and witnessing and building skills of advocacy. I think that we have amazing tools and expertise and experience in our community. And our task is to mobilize that in a way that supports a quality of life that all people deserve. And that's where I want to spend my time.
Mhm. Good.
And I just to tell you, Norma, you are always spot on. And we are in touch with UMass. The challenge has been with regard to the groups that have typically given us technology support is that there are different messages about their participation and proximity towards older adults. And I think that the usual invitations that I extend are usually taken up with vigor, and they're helping us a lot. And I've actually had quite the opposite this year, is that none of them have responded. And I think that it's a different kind of.
They've got enough to, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that yeah, and I've spoken to the deans and Sally Nowski, who works with all of the fraternities and the sororities and also other service groups, and that has really been the message back to them, is that they're supposed to self-contain, and so I think they just like us are experiencing anxiety. And I think that they're probably bandwidth to be able to help and do more volunteerism, which what they have typically done and helped us a lot has really just been attenuated. But that's always something to explore and to look at those new ways. But
Well,
we do have
it works both ways, because I think the young ones learn a lot from the seniors too.
Absolutely. It's always a joyful gathering whether it's around technology or any other issue. So hopefully we'll get back to that and then be able to bump it up a bit. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they do think of us. I will tell you, they're thinking of all of us at the
Yeah.
senior center. They're just not able to really commit in that way, in that sort of robust way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Norma. Great to see you
Nice to see you too.
on your patio and all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta enjoy it while we can.
We miss you.
No, thanks, I miss you guys.
Okay, we're going to end the question period and move on to the wrap up.
All right, thank you so much. I'm off camera, but I'm right here. Come here. Presenting our guests with the standard Amherst Women's Club mug.
Oh my God, I love this.
So you can think of us with your morning coffee or tea. And thank you. That was so interesting, and learning about elderhood is just fascinating, and you're fabulous speakers. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to close by reminding our members, and okay, they're stepping away so I can, a little bit of choreography here. I'm going to take my mask off because I'm all alone. And I just want to remind you that we will be meeting again in 2 weeks, and UMass Professor Dr. Michael Rollins will be speaking with us about climate warming and climate change. So I think it will be a fascinating conversation with him. So until then, be safe and stay well, and thank you for being here today.
On my notes on my phone, it says, look, I don't have a mug at work because you're not allowed to use anything. Yeah, so I was gonna bring in.
See this right here?
Yeah.